Live from the Clarity from Chaos studios, heard worldwide, it's Dave Campbell. On every episode, Dave and his guests explore, discuss, and work on solutions to some of life's biggest challenges. So, if you're ready, be prepared to be enlightened, amused, and even shocked by what you hear. And now, the real, the authentic, the one and only Dave Campbell.
Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Campbell, and you are listening to Clarity from Chaos. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. Ladies and gentlemen, darkness is falling on our country, and unless we understand and get involved, we will lose this great country of ours. We have a spiritual battle going on, and it needs to be recognized as such. The church needs to step up, and the Bible needs to be present in our lives. But before we move on, I'd like to play an old stand-up routine done by the late George Carlin. In it, Carlin chides us on the use of euphemistic language because, as you know from our corporate media, it is used to hide the truth, and it reflects our difficulty in facing harsh realities. So take a moment and enjoy this.
I don't like euphemistic language, words that shade the truth. American English is packed with euphemism because Americans have trouble dealing with reality, and in order to shield themselves from it, they use soft language, and somehow it gets worse with every generation. Here's an example. There's a condition in combat that occurs when a soldier is completely stressed out and is on the verge of nervous collapse. In World War I, it was called shell shock. Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables. Shell shock. It almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was more than 80 years ago. Then a generation passed, and in World War II, the same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say. Doesn't seem to hurt as much. Fatigue is a nicer word than shock. Shell shock, battle fatigue. By the early 1950s, the Korean War had come along, and the very same condition was being called operational exhaustion. The phrase was up to 8 syllables now, and any last traces of humanity had been completely squeezed out of it, like something that might happen to your car. Then, barely 15 years later, we got into Vietnam, and thanks to the deceptions surrounding that war, it's no surprise that the very same condition was referred to as post-traumatic stress disorder. Still 8 syllables, but we've added a hyphen, and the pain is completely buried under jargon. Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll bet if they'd have been calling it shell shock, some of those Vietnam veterans might have received the attention they needed. But it didn't happen, and one of the reasons is that soft language. The language that takes the life out of life. And somehow, it keeps getting worse. Here are some more examples. At some point in my life, toilet paper became bathroom tissue. Sneakers became running shoes. False teeth became dental appliances. Medicine turned into medication. Information became directory assistance. The dump became the landfill. Motels turned into motor lodges. House trailers into mobile homes. Used cars into previously owned vehicles. Room service became guest room dining. Riots became civil disorders. A strike was a job action. A zoo turned into a wildlife park. The jungle became a rainforest. The swamp became a wetlands. Glasses became prescription eyewear. Garages became parking structures. Drug addiction became substance abuse. Soap operas turned into daytime dramas. A gambling joint became a gaming resort. A prostitute became a sex worker. Theaters became performing arts centers. Wife-beating became domestic violence, and constipation became occasional irregularity. When I was a little boy, if I got sick, I went to a doctor, who sent me to a hospital to be treated by other doctors. Now I go to a family practitioner who belongs to a health maintenance organization which sends me to a wellness center to be treated by health care delivery professionals. Poor people used to live in slums. Now, the economically disadvantaged occupy substandard housing in the inner cities. And a lot of them are broke. They don't have negative cash flow. They're broke because many of them were fired. In other words, management wanted to curtail redundancies in the human resources area, and so many workers are no longer viable members of the workforce. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody, they neutralize people, or they depopulate an area. The government doesn't lie, it engages in disinformation. The Pentagon actually measures nuclear radiation in something called sunshine units. Israeli murderers are called commandos, Arab commandos are called terrorists. The Contra killers were known as freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? And some of this softened language is just silly and embarrassing. On the airlines, they say they're going to pre-board passengers in need of special assistance. Cripples. Simple, honest, direct language. There's no shame attached to the word cripple. No shame. It's a word used in Bible translations. Jesus healed the cripples. It doesn't take 6 words to describe that condition. But we don't have cripples anymore. Instead, we have the physically challenged. Is that a grotesque enough evasion for you? How about differently abled? I've actually heard cripples referred to as differently abled. You can't even call them handicapped anymore. They'll say, we're not handicapped, we're handy-capable. These poor suckers have been bullshitted by the system into believing that if you change the name of the condition, somehow you'll change the condition. Well, it doesn't work that way. I'm sure you've noticed we have no deaf people in this country, hearing impaired. And no one's blind, partially sighted, or visually impaired. And thank God we no longer have stupid children. Today's kids all have learning disabilities. Or they're minimally exceptional. How would you like to be told that about your child? Actually, it sounds faintly positive. Your son is minimally exceptional. Oh, thank God for that, I guess. Best of all, psychologists now call ugly people those with severe appearance deficits. Things are so bad that any day I expect to hear a rape victim referred to as an unwilling sperm recipient. Of course, it's been obvious for some time that there are no old people in this country anymore. They all died, and what we have now are senior citizens. How's that for a lifeless, typically American 20th century phrase? There's no pulse in a senior citizen. But that's a term I've come to accept. That's what old people are going to be called. But the phrase I will continue to resist is when they describe an old person as being 90 years young. Imagine how sad the fear of aging that is revealed in that phrase, to be unable even to use the word old, to have to use its antonym. And I understand the fear of aging is natural. It's universal, isn't it? No one wants to get old. No one wants to die. But we do. We die. And we don't like that. So we bullshit ourselves. I started bullshitting myself when I reached my 40s. I'd look in the mirror and say, well, I guess I'm getting older. Older sounds better than old, doesn't it? Sounds like it might even last a little longer. Bullshit. I'm getting old, and it's okay. But the baby boomers can't handle that. And remember, the boomers invented most of this soft language. So now they've come up with a new life phase, pre-elderly. They say they're pre-elderly. How sad. How relentlessly sad. But it's all right, folks, because thanks to our fear of death, no one has to die. They can all just pass away. Or expire like a magazine subscription. If it happens in the hospital, it'll be called a terminal episode. The insurance company will refer to it as negative patient care outcome. And if it's the result of malpractice, they'll say it was a therapeutic misadventure. To be honest, some of this language makes me want to vomit. Well, perhaps vomit is too strong a word. It makes me want to engage in an involuntary personal protein spill.
Our guest on this edition of Clarity is not a newcomer to the show. He is someone who has been on the front lines fighting this evil and that is trying to take over this country. He is the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, Mr. Michael Letts. Michael has over 30 years of law enforcement experience, and his company has supplied over 17,000 conceivable and active shooter vests to police forces across this great country. Welcome back, Michael.
Well, Dave, it's always a privilege to be with you, especially when I get such a great introduction as you did with the play on words. I mean, it is quite refreshing to hear that intro there. And boy, yeah, your intro, man, was sure right. It's amazing how we've changed terminology over the decades.
Yeah, and it's purposeful to disguise what's going on, and
Sure.
that's the devious part about all of this, Mike. It's done on purpose. It's, you can't just say something that's clear, authentic, and to the point anymore. You've got to somehow roll it around and turn it into something else.
Well, it comes from this standpoint, Dave, that, we've adapted. It seems like everything has to be politically correct. And what does that mean? Don't offend anybody. So
Right.
find a flowery way to say something that's negative. So at the end of the day, you think you said it, but you really haven't. I mean, you haven't told them the truth, and they walk away thinking that whatever you were having the discussion about, that they're good with it, that everything was great. There was no negative
Right.
about what they were doing, and that's where we're at in society today. It's a scary thought, Dave, because we're doing that in our educational system. We're doing it in our school system. So, I mean, it's bad as it is now, but you haven't seen anything yet. We're at the tip of the iceberg. We're training future generations
Yeah.
in our educational system to be like that.
Hey, was it one of your vests the other night at the correspondence dinner?
It was.
Oh,
Thank
there
God
you
it was.
go.
Thank God it was, David. Let me explain real quickly to our audience why. Because remember, we've talked about on your show that only 10% of cops across the country currently have
Right.
active shooter vests. And this Secret Service officer was wearing an active shooter vest. He was shot with a long range rifle. So my point being, there were plenty of agents there that night that were having the old concealable vest. Had he had on a concealable vest, it would have penetrated right through it and killed him instantly, because I saw the mark. I saw where it hit. He was a dead-on hit. I mean, if it hadn't been an active shooter vest, he'd been dead.
Wow, you ought to be pretty proud of yourself, my man.
Well, I'll tell you what we are. We're very proud of, the ability to protect them. And most importantly, we're proud of the two things, Dave. We're proud of the fact that our officers, have that kind of spirit. You saw them engage, jump on the dioceses, and make sure that they were ready to take the bullet if necessary to protect the president.
Right.
And quite frankly, I'm very proud of the president saying, what are we canceling the event for? Get me back out
Exactly.
there and let me give this speech. We're not going to let terrorists and, the far leftists dictate to us what is necessary for this country. Unfortunately, he got overruled. You say, how does the president get overruled? Well,
yeah.
Protocol, it was a breach of security. I mean, when they open the doors and then you have people coming in and out, you don't know who may have slipped in. And that was the whole purpose why it was
Right.
decided at the last minute that it was a safety issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of finger pointing going on now, Mike, but I don't know how you can absolutely, unless you just put somebody in a bubble, come up with an absolute protective case for anybody, right?
You really can, especially, Dave, with a hotel. That's where Ronald Reagan was shot.
Right.
I was
Right.
involved with the Secret Service back in that time, and I can tell you this from firsthand experience, Dave. We're using the same protocol and logistics today that we were using 45 years ago. In fact, it's even worse. And you and I both know with a business, you use the same operation you've used for 45 years, and you haven't adapted to the change. Your business is headed for disaster. And
Yeah.
that's where we're at with the Secret Service. I'm not in any way discounting the officers. Many of those officers are just America's heroes, valiant, and wanting to do the job of protecting president and all the cabinet members. But if you're using antiquated stuff and you don't have the necessary equipment that's necessary, you're at a disadvantage, Dave. One of the things that proved was the president has said we need to do a ballroom. Of course, everybody jumped on, he's just trying to make it grandeur thing. He's trying to leave a memorial to himself. The interesting part about that is not only would a ballroom have alleviated situations such as you needing to try to protect the hotels, it would have, he was going to be able to use it, Dave. It would be finished long after he was gone. He
Right.
was trying to protect future presidents, future generations.
Yeah.
And he got criticized. It's kind of like I said, he can't do anything without the left criticizing it. If he says it's a beautiful sunny day today, you ought to go out and enjoy it. the headline reads, "The president supports skin cancer and is trying to get you out, to get more of it." It's just amazing.
Yeah, if and to your point, if he cured cancer, they would have come up with something else, right?
Correct.
So it's really unfortunate, and that's kind of what the left has just real over the last, I want to go back quite a ways, but they've just turned into evil. They're um, I just can't say anything positive about them. Go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. I think one of the things we're talking about this situation with the president that just scares me to death, Dave, is the assailant, Mister um, his name escapes me at the moment, was the one who that we captured. He's a teacher. I mean, he's
Right.
not by himself, Dave. There are thousands of teachers who have that violent hatred and,
Right.
and just vileness. And they're raising our next generation. And we're letting them do it. We're paying them to do it, Dave.
I know.
Our tax dollars are paying it. That's what's
I
so
know.
frustrating.
And it's infuriating, and I that's why I'm a firm believer that homeschooling needs to be pushed to the forefront, because these kids need to be pulled out of that environment. It's nothing but a Marxist training camp,
Correct.
and it's not doing the next generation any good at all. Period.
We have concern about today, and you're right. We're fixing to lose this country. We don't do something about it. But you think it's bad today when you're trading your future generation this way with that
Right.
kind of educational system? You
Right.
hadn't seen anything yet. Wait till that generation comes online.
Yeah. I don't know, Mike. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the recent shakeup in the DOJ. I know you and I on previous shows had talked about Bondi being on on the ice pack, and whether she was going to drop into the water or not, and apparently she did. Um, I don't know. I don't know if the interim attorney general is going to right the ship and set the proper tone, or what. I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Todd brings a lot of baggage with him. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna use a little bit of what you talk about in the warm up. I mean, a little bit of the terminology, but try to also be as direct as possible. Pam just simply wouldn't get the job done. Not wouldn't get the
Right.
job done. And of course, we've discovered since then that she was getting a lot of retainer money from Democratic law firms that probably helped propagate her philosophy that I'm not going to let you off the hook, Dave, but I'm just not going to worry about moving you forward right now.
Right.
We'll wait for 3 or
Yeah.
4 years. So there's a new administration, and we'll figure out where to go
Right.
from there. Todd has had an awful lot of upbringing, shall we say, within the Democratic system as well. And so there is concern, especially, those who know the background. Well, are you going to abide by your old Democratic buddy, stand by them, or are you going to do
Right.
the right thing? So what the president has decided, and I think it's the appropriate thing to do, is basically we have told Todd, here's why Pam left. We didn't see any indictments. Couldn't get the job done. Too many friendships, too many relationships. Now, you want the job. You've already expressed an interest in the job. We're not committing that to you. There are some very fine people out there that could do a fantastic job as well. But to be fair, we're going to give you a small amount of time. The indictments are forthcoming, and we see not just saying they're forthcoming. We actually see them, and we see aggressive movement. We can sit down and have another chat. If we're going to waste a little bit of time, that will tell us everything we need to know. And I wouldn't go print my business cards just yet.
Yeah, I don't think you should be calling the interior decorator and getting the office redone just yet.
I agree.
Because I still think, and it's interesting that Bongino's come out and started talking about this document that they found in the burn bag in the FBI headquarters, and then Blanche comes out and they indict Comey over the seashell thing. And I'm really kind of surprised because to me, that's pretty damn thin.
It is.
Now I don't know if they're going to roll a bunch of other things into that, but trying to do something with Comey and get a jury convinced of the intent of those seashells, I'm pretty skeptical on that myself.
I think you got great cause to be skeptical, but now let me give you some things to chew on. And with being careful not to divulge too much, I think, Dave, you and your listeners can pretty much come to your own assessment
Right.
and make some decisions on your own. But let me just give you some things to consider. We have substantial evidence on Russiagate now with Obama, and not just Obama, it's the administration. Okay, we're talking about Clapper, we're talking about Brennan, we're talking about Susan Rice, we're talking about Joe Biden as vice president, not even as president, as vice president. We're talking about Hillary Clinton, who was the Secretary of State, and we could just go on and on and on. I mean, there's just a huge agents, FBI agents, Comey being one as the director, of course, a number of the agents as well. Now, the information that we have, as Dan pointed out, a lot of that was recovered from the burn bag, is very damning. But let me give you some law enforcement experience, Dave. The most damning thing you can do is have somebody who was a player on the inside who is willing to give you the information, and not just give you the information, but actually testify and point the finger. Yeah, Dave and I were at this thing, and here's the calendar, here's the restaurant, here is the waiter. They can
Right.
prove that, what I'm saying is true.
Yeah.
And so you could possibly look at indicting somebody with a smaller charge to say, I'm doing this for a reason. I got a bunch more that we can fix in to pop down. However, I will hold that if you decide you want to be helpful to the situation. We call you a canary. If
Right.
you want to look at your situation and decide that perhaps you're going to be bad off either way, okay? Your reputation is not going to be nice regardless of how this ends up. It's not going to end up very nice. But it may end up better for you, Dave, if you're a canary, considering what we might be willing to cut to get that situation, than if you decide to just take it on. Because we've already shown you that we're serious. We just popped you on something that really is insignificant. But we can add so much more to it as this other progresses.
Yeah.
What's your call?
Yeah.
I can tell you that I think you're going to get very favorable. If you're not going to, you already have gotten very favorable responses. And what we have talked about before on your thing about a military tribunal, the only thing that was lacking was to be charged.
I was just going to ask you about the tribunal concept.
It is. Let's just say that train has left the station and is already fixing to roll into the new station it's coming into. And again, you say, well, shouldn't that be going to the Department of Justice? I'm not saying we can't change tracks at the last minute, but I would tell you this, Dave, I'm fighting to not do that. And here's why. You just have a corrupt justice system. Let's just be very blunt.
Absolutely.
The Supreme Court. I could tell you horror stories with justices on the court. I could tell you horror stories we got 292 that Senator Schumer, that Chucky, said were confirmed in the last administration. When they had control of the Senate, and they've now been activated to fight this administration. So we know that there's just tremendous corruption in the judiciary. We know the corruption in Congress. My goodness, you got Maduro saying, I got a list of just 60 U.S. senators. Forget the House and everybody, governors and all, that were on Venezuela's payroll. That's over there, by the way, with Tulsi at DNI, and we're validating that because I don't just take your word for it, but if I could find the offshore accounts and the history of the transactions, you're screwed, Dave. And quite frankly, just to let you know, that's been underway, and I can report this to you. That statement that was made, I'm not saying that we agree there's 60, but I'm saying that statement that was made has merit, okay? So we know we've got a corruption problem in Congress. We just talked about all the evidence that has come out, especially we found that burn bag, et cetera, against the administration, the Obama administration. And America wants to see justice.
Yes.
And I think the president has finally come to the realization that we don't really care. I mean, yes, I don't want to pay more for gas. I want my gas to go down. I want you to finish out what's in Iran. We could go through the whole list. But the biggest thing I want
Right.
is you promised me you were going to drain the swamp.
Yeah.
Now, if you can't drain the swamp, what good does the other do? Whether I'm paying 50 cents a gallon more or 50 cents less, if I have a corrupt system with a corrupt electoral that'll never change, I don't have a country anymore. Who
No,
cares?
you don't. I mean, and the credibility in Congress, both the Senate and the House, is just for crap.
It
I
is.
mean, it. There's been enough information leaked out and found out to basically indict just about every damn one of them,
Yeah,
save for maybe a handful. And I'm not even sure that that's probably true. They're all up to their eyeballs in this crap. And quite frankly, the country deserves better than what they're getting. They absolutely do. And, night after night, we sit here and listen to the Democrats wail and cry and moan and groan about this or that. And then the Republicans, they thump their chest a little bit, but they can't communicate for shit. And across all of it, there's no accountability. None.
You're right, Dave. One of the things that I agree very strongly with what you said, let me reinforce what you just said, is before when I would have been on your show a year ago, and those blasted Democrats would say, hey, that statement still stands. But let me tell you, we've got just as many corrupt Republicans.
Oh,
We've
sure.
got just as many corrupt rhinos. If that's the situation, I'm telling people now, I'm not going to use the party label anymore, one side or the other. It's the person. We have corrupt people with no character. I don't care what their label is.
Right.
They have no character. And the reason why they are the way they are is because we've allowed over the decades for them to set up systems with NGOs and other things where they're just raping the American citizen, just stealing, frauding left and right, making all these financial arrangements for themselves. They don't want to give that up. They don't care what their party label is. It's interesting. Just today, you had with Ilhan Omar, we had a motion to go on ahead and move forward with the documentation of her illegal immigrant status, which will automatically remove her from Congress and send her back. You know who helped support making sure that didn't come up for a vote? The Republicans. They got just as many Republicans as they had Democrats that voted against that. Why would you vote to block accountability of a congresswoman who is nothing but a communist? And I mean, I could call her all kind of things. That wouldn't be appropriate.
Right.
Sure. You know what I'm saying?
Nope.
Dave.
And people see it. People see it and they're disgusted by it. And the problem is they're turning their back on the Republic.
Yes.
And the more and more of them that turn their back on the Republic gives it more and more that they get. The ones that are corrupting everything get more and more availability to opportunity to corrupt even more. The more that people are not involved, not engaged in this thing, not vetting their candidates properly, so on and so forth. The whole thing in Minnesota, really, you can condemn the Somalis if you want. They're complicit. But it really needs to be dropped right in the middle of Congress and go, why in the hell did you write a law that has holes the size of San Francisco in it that would allow this kind of fraud to take place? Sure. You wrote the damn law. You also allowed all of this backdoor activity to be excluded from that law. And so to me, the Somalis are complicit, but if you pull back the covers, the real root cause is the formulation of laws in Congress that aren't worth a crap.
It's their greed. It's their greed for power and their greed for money. They've set up the system to be abused, and they're taking advantage of. One of the positives I have to report to you, though, Dave, is the last 72 hours, we've put in issued countless subpoenas and busted into countless locations in Minnesota. Justice is coming now. We've got the information. It's going to happen just what you said. The difference between what you said and what is happening is they're going to be dumping it on the state first. I mean, Tim Walz is in big trouble
Yeah.
along with
Yeah.
everybody else. I agree with you. I think that's where we start. But if you don't get Congress, because Congress has allowed it to happen underneath their watch, then what have we really saw? We've cleaned up a state, but we haven't cleaned up the source of the filth, and that's coming from
Yeah,
Congress.
and going back to the tribunal thing, Mike, my concern is that the Dems are going to take over. They are going to get a majority in either the House or the Senate at the midterms, which is going to completely derail the whole tribunal thing.
Yes,
because I'm not sure how the military can set the tribunal up, but I'm not sure that either party are going to stand for it, right?
Well, here's how it works, David, so that we're on the same page. Only the president of the United States could even establish a tribunal. Now, President Trump has already done that. The tribunals have been established, but it's a twofold process. It's establishing them, and then it's what we call charging them. Charging them means, okay, here is a case that falls within the parameter of what the Constitution says national security are. Go get them, boys. We haven't been charged yet, and that's what we're waiting for.
Okay. All right. So maybe he can just circumvent Congress and get it done on his own, because he's not going to get much help.
He can do that. The reason you hear a little hesitancy is, the president, if we had him on with us, he were being blunt with the American people, he'd say, look, I've also got to run the country.
Yeah.
That means I got to have a budget. That means I have to work with members of Congress. I'm not a dictator or a king,
Right.
that I can say, whatever I say is gospel. Doesn't work that way. So what helps the American people the most, for me to try to work through this or to issue edicts?
Yeah.
My opinion is issue the edicts, because once we drain the swamp, we'll get back to a system to where it works the way it's supposed to be once we get rid of the crud.
I think if you just trot the first one out,
yes,
in front of a tribunal, the rest of them are going to line up, and that's going to be the end of it right there, because they're going to know that the jig is up.
Well, where we're headed, so that your listeners understand it, I believe you're going to see that on an executive branch level, talking about with the former administration, with Obama, et cetera. My recommendation is we do 3 tribunals. We do one there to begin with. We do one, and there's plenty of people that we can categorize in that description in the judicial system. And we do one within Congress. Now, when I say one, I can't do the entire judicial system. You're talking about just 1 or 2 players, 1 or 2, 3 or 5 players in Congress. But once you see that happening and people start seeing on national TV, people walking out in handcuffs, and the other members, whether it's Congress or the judiciary or whatever, see that we're real, this is going to be happening. One thing I know for certain about criminals, Dave, there's no honor and integrity among them. They'll turn on each other rats jumping
they'll
off
be they'll be eating their own young. I mean, there's not going to be any place that anybody can hide, because they'll be busier in Casper and shit in a windstorm.
Exactly. And see, I think what you'll see happen, Dave, in that situation is, let's take Congress. Suddenly, well, if I get out of here, maybe they'll leave me alone. You'll see mass defections in Congress. And then if we, the American people, do our job, and that is send people of integrity, forget the party, people of integrity there, those people of integrity can then turn around, because you'll have members of the judiciary feeling the same way. They'll be saying, I think I'm going to retire from the bench this afternoon. I think I'm going to retire. We can then put key people of integrity back on the bench, and then we can tell, and I'll be the one leading the fight, tell the tribunal, thank you for your service. Service is no longer required. We are back on a constitutional venue, and let's keep it that way.
Yeah. I hope it's so. I do hope it's so. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of fluff and bluster around Cash. Do you think he's going to survive all of that? No.
I think I think Cash. Well, let me back up on that. You asked my opinion. Did I think he's going to survive?
Yeah.
And, I know Cashwell is a good guy, but once they put the crosshairs on you, it's hard to get out. You're going to see the same thing with Cash that we talked about with Todd, talking about the AG. all right, here's all the complaints. If I don't start seeing some movement like yesterday, and it getting you got a very short fuse to get some of these things accomplished, we're gonna have to find somebody that can, because you won't survive the criticism.
Yeah. Yeah, I know he's been trouting out his statistics quite frequently, trying to build his body of work. But, to me, that's just he shouldn't need to be doing that. He should be focused on the work. The statistics will take care of themselves, right?
Well, I think one of the things, Dave, that the American people are looking at is, okay, you tell me I locked up 10 drug dealers last week. I'm supposed to do that anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's part of your
expect that
job.
out of you, Dave.
Yeah, it's your job description, right?
What I want to know is, I'm hearing all this stuff about people who think they're above the law.
Right.
And I want to know, what are you doing about that? If it's true, which you should have already figured it out by now, whether you should have gotten enough evidence, if it's true, to either indict or to come out and hold a press conference saying, you people quit saying that because we've checked it out, there's nothing there. One or the other. And if there is enough evidence for indictment, where are they? And right now, I ask this question all the time across the country. How many indictments do you know of, Dave, that have been issued?
None.
None.
Well, and to your point, the whole thing around Swalwell, if it's as cut and dried as some of the inside people that I've talked to have indicated, the investigation is pretty much should be taken care of, and he should be in a jumpsuit. Period.
The same thing with Adam Schiff. The same thing with on the legislative side, Omar.
Yeah,
the same thing on the executive side, talking about with Obama or with Brennan or with Rice or any of those.
Well,
I mean,
quite frankly,
I know what we've got, Dave. Why are we not doing anything with it?
If Omar has violated her immigration status, she doesn't need to be supported by Congress, by the Republicans or the Democrats. She needs to be handcuffed and marched out of Congress.
Exactly.
Period. I mean, I could give a damn about the politics or the photo op of the whole damn thing.
Right.
If she lied on her documentation, and they've got the documentation,
black and white,
exactly. It's a done deal, right?
You're correct. So this is what becomes, whether it's Omar or anything else we talked about, Obama or anything. The question is, so why are you, if you've got the facts, why do you keep stalling?
Why are you treading water on this thing? That goes to the next question I've got for you, Mike. And that's the people that were killed in Cuba when Cuba fired on that boat and killed them. That whole story must have sunk someplace in the Caribbean, because I haven't heard another word about it.
You haven't heard another word because it doesn't give the narrative that wants to be heard. You say, what are you talking about? They killed American citizens,
right,
without cause. Okay,
four of them, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct. And now, what would America demand?
Right,
justice.
Absolutely.
Now, we can't get justice for what you and I have just been talking about. So, do they want to add another case? I mean,
well,
the best they can do for them is just slide it underneath the table. That's the frustration that America. This is what I keep telling the administration. I don't care whether we reverse Iran tomorrow, which we're going to win in Iran. Don't worry about that. But whether gas goes down to 10 cents a gallon and whether everybody's walking around with $1,000 bills hanging out of their pocket, America sees that it is so corrupt. We are one of the most corrupt countries. Right. And if we're going to be corrupt and endorse it, and we endorse it by doing nothing, then what do we really have? We have nothing. We've already lost.
Right.
So why do I need to go to the polls, Dave? Why do I need to get involved in the elections period? Why do I need to serve in office? We don't have a country left to serve it.
Exactly. And then you think of, our boys in uniform, and they basically answer to these nut jobs, right?
Yeah, they do.
That, they answer to them, right? It's just frustrating. And then the last piece of my frustration is the whole J6 accountability.
Hasn't been any.
Hadn't been any. And other than those poor people that sat in prison or in jail without trial, for years. And it's just the whole thing has just come and gone like it was just another day, right?
You know,
Except for those poor families that suffered through
correct.
this crap.
You are correct, and it's the same situation. Look at all the evidence that we have from the speaker, from former speaker talking about Pelosi, etc. We have tons of evidence of what really happened,
Right.
but no movement, no indictments. And why is that? It's the same situation. Here is their playbook. They've been good at this for decades. Let's okay, if you finally discover me, Dave, then let's try to downplay it, at least to the standpoint that we can wait long enough till there's a new election cycle, and then people will forget. Will there be something else to go on? That is how Congress, that is how judiciary, that is how this country has been working over the last few decades. That's why it's so corrupt. Because in waiting, I wait it out. I take a little sabbatical. New players now. I get back and I continue to do the same thing I was doing before and still
Yeah.
rake it in. No consequences. So then you have the rest of the American people going, wow, I wish I could get in on that deal. I'd like to kind of get in to sit up, barely surviving. Am I going to be able to pay my rent or my mortgage this month?
Right.
I'd like to be sitting with billions of dollars in an offshore account, not worried about what's going to happen in the future. But the fact of the matter is that most of Americans have principle about them. And even though that sounds good, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it to this country. We're
Right.
allowing a select group to do it. And it's time to bring them to justice, Dave.
Yep. Well, sir, it's been an absolute pleasure once again, Mike, to have you on the show. And I want to thank you very much. Where can people go out, your social media presence for Invest? Where can they go out, find your information so they can donate? Because they've already seen within the last few days
It works.
what that means, right?
Yes. Thank you, Dave, so much. If they'll go to our website, that's investUSA.org. It's a charity.org. On there is listed every media outlet, whether it is X, whether it is LinkedIn, whether it is
Okay.
Facebook. Here's the funny part about it. At least I want to be blunt and honest on this show with you, Dave.
Sure.
I don't have the memory capacity to remember all the addresses and the tags and all the tagging where to go. So I have to just put it all on the website and say, go there. I can't remember that. Go there and you can find anything you want to know.
Well, again, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure. And as I've been doing, I'm going to close the show with a verse, and this is from John 15:7. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. So remember, if you need guidance, take a knee and pray. God will listen. Mike, it's been a pleasure. I wish you well, my friend.
Amen. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for getting the truth out. God bless you. God bless America. We're going to win this war, folks. Let's just stay united before God and let God lead the way.
There you go. Take care, Mike.
Take care, my friend.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to listen to more Clarity from Chaos shows on demand, go to clarityfromchaos.buzzsprout.com or send Dave an email at info@clarityfromchaos.com for information on previous shows. You can also listen to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Twitter, or Google Podcast. Until next time, please remember, it's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Be well, everyone.